Welcome back, Badgers, to episode 8 of our little podcast. Our first one of 2023, so hope you all had a nice festive and restive break. We're hoping to pick up where we left off at the back end of last year and try and get the cadence of these podcasts up a little bit. We've been slacking rather, haven't we, Mr. Bledge?
We have. I've had the dreaded lurgy, which most of probably listeners have had as well.
Yeah, it's been pretty bad over here in northwest of England, UK in general. I think most people have suffered from one kind of flu or another, but we're fighting fit again. So
a raring to go.
Just to reintroduce ourselves for those of you who are wondering who I am, my name is Sam Cooper, and I am Links from the Road on Instagram and SD Cooper on Twitter. I'm a golf course architect with Clayton de Vries and Pont, and I spent a couple of years going around playing all of the links courses in Britain in my van. And I am joined
by James Bledge, who I am the links manager at Royal Liverpool, Hoylake. And yeah, 50% of golf badgers, or probably 30%, would you say?
What, your effort, your input
Yes.
to the thing? 30?
Yeah, 25?
That's getting
there. But tonight's episode is brought to you by Madre Excepcional, El Alma de Madrid.
Did you make it through your podcast, through your advent calendar?
You did tonight.
Yeah, okay.
The last.
It was very nice.
Yeah, the last lot of Beaver Towns were finished off by Sam tonight because I was too ill over Christmas to drink any of them. But yeah, we've gone just for a standard lager just now, which our guest tonight it informs me tastes like Foster's, which I'm disgusted at. Why are you laughing? So tonight we are joined by one of my best pals in the industry, Mr. Lee Strutt.
Ooh.
Good evening, gentlemen, and thank you for my invitation here, and great opportunity to chat to you both.
Thank you for coming so far to record this podcast.
I would like to say I come here purposely just for this, but I do have a little road trip as well on the sideline.
Mm-hmm. So let's start by telling everyone your role and where you're at just now, and then we can digress back to giving a brief history of your career.
So I am the Director of Agronomy at Cabot Cape Breton, which is on Nova Scotia in Canada. So I'm responsible for 3 golf courses. We have the Links, the Cliffs, and we've got a par 3 10-hole golf course which we call the Nest.
Excellent. And have you played much of these courses since you've been across? Or you're not like me, are you? You work.
Yes, I actually like to work on the golf course. Yeah, you don't see many Twitter pictures of me playing golf.
Well, I could probably tell that by how you played today.
I thought I played quite well, actually. Well, the concern is every time I play with you, Bledge, you cut my handicap. So
we've had I'd say a nice afternoon. The company was nice, but so we played with Jay and Rob, your
superintendent and first assistant, yes,
and lovely guys who are now napping in the Green Lodge in Hoylake, whilst we've been eating Mrs. Bledge's lovely lasagna and key lime pie.
Mm-hmm.
But we had a great day game around Hoylake today, and it was so windy that I would say it was a 50-yard wind, which is standard, Sam.
Did you not get winds like that down in Kent?
Yeah, we did, but I would never usually.
It was a windy day. It was
because
really
our guests had come how many hours on a plane from Canada this morning?
The guys flew Halifax, Nova Scotia to Iceland, and then to Manchester. So they landed at 10:30 today, got in the car, come straight here.
Got destroyed by the winds, by the mighty winds.
Yes. Well, I kind of wanted to make sure that they felt like they were at home.
And the funniest thing about today, Lee had contacted me saying, look, we need 2 demo sets. And I was like, no problem. So our pro John Hegarty was going to sort them out. We turned up, and one of Lee's guys is left-handed. And there was no left-handed demo set, so he played all the way around with a 7-iron.
Which is what you want in a...
And he loved it though. He did.
And he beat all three of us.
He did, I just thought it was great because, and what was amazing about it was the fact it was like, man, here's my first accent. I'm sorry, we're only about 8 minutes in or something. And I'm hitting you an accent already. The Canada one's a bit different from
just
the
make
usual.
sure it's
Yeah,
good,
yeah.
it'll be fine.
Think about it.
Come on, pressure's on.
Man, I don't care about that. I'm just here for the experience.
No, that's not Canadian.
That's not very good, is it?
No.
Should we get back to Lee?
We'll cut that bit out. Right, so Lee, tell us, let's start from... Tell us all about your mum and dad at the golf club, and let's start from the start and talk us through your career. It's very interesting.
I think before we start, I want to clarify something, and I think this is people commonly perceive that myself and other people that say like you're at a very good club and your career's been set out and you've worked out, well, I'll start here and then I'll go to the next job. And I would probably say for the majority of successful people, that's your career path has never been set that way, and mine was identical. You know, when I kind of grew up in the West Country in Somerset, and my heart was I was going to be in farming. I loved being outside, loved working with machinery. It was just absolutely amazing. And then my parents took up a position where they were F&B manager at Bath Golf Club, and at the age of 14 we lived on site, you know, at the weekends and summer holidays. Hey, what am I going to do? I can't work on a farm. So I started helping out on the golf course, and you know, that first inkling of, do you know what, this is actually really nice. I actually quite like it. I can jump on a tractor and go out gang mowing, be outside, I can get a suntan. I really enjoyed it. And that carried on until my parents finished up and they relocated to the south coast. I stayed in Bath for about another year, became quite reckless, and then decided actually I kind of probably needed to be with my parents to put me back on the straight and narrow, and I relocated back down to Bournemouth. And within a very short space of time, I got a job at Broadstone Golf Club, another phenomenal golf course. But of course, to me at the time it wasn't necessarily, it was a job.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't recognise how good this golf course was, and I think the key part of going to work at Broadstone, I'd been to school, hated it like most greenkeepers, didn't have any interest in what we were doing in the classes. I was more interested looking out the window and seeing what was happening. And I went to the course manager at the time was a guy called Adrian Archer, and he said to me, if you come and work for me, you're going to have to go to college. And I kind of really resisted, so like, no, not interested, don't want to do this. And he was true to his word. He said, job offer's gone then. You either come and work for me and you go to college. So I went to work for him, went to college, and all of a sudden, for the first time, I actually sat in a classroom with other people that were interested in learning about soils, agronomy, and you would share ideas about what you've done and where you work. So at that point, I was probably 18, 19, and it was probably the first time I thought, do you know what, I think this could actually be a career. And I had no aspirations of being course manager, but I had aspirations of being a good greenkeeper. I kind of, this old thing about I want to be able to cut straight lines, I really want to be proficient, I want to have pride in my work, and I wanted people to have pride in what I did. And then as time goes on, and like we're all keen to earn more money, I got a job at another golf course called Knighton Heath. Went there as first assistant, and I'd done a couple of years there. And then after that, there was a construction place called Dudsbury Golf Club, Don Still Design, and I went there as a deputy because A, I wanted to do construction, and two, I wanted a promotion and more of this. Yes, I wanted more money, but I kind of wanted to be recognised that I had some autonomy over a team. I can start directing and start, I would say dictating, too strong a word.
I would say dictating.
Let's go with dictating then. That a standard, and that first part of how do you get other people to work to a better standard than yourself. And that went on for another couple of years, and I kind of really wanted to become a deputy elsewhere. I really didn't want to become a course manager yet. I wasn't.
How old were you?
So I would have been 24 when I was at Dudsbury.
So you're 24 and you've done like Broadstone as a always beautifully presented
Heathland Golf Course.
Immaculate whenever I've been there. And so you've gone sort of from that end to perhaps a slightly different feel, and then the construction as well. So you've got quite a broad collection of places where you worked by the age of 24.
Yeah. And I think the thing is that every time I moved, I was trying to find something different. I was never really looking, can I do the same? And then there was a lot of like dead man shoes, a lot of people. There was very little movement in the South Coast, and it was the emphasis was if you wanted to get on and start carving a career, you needed to move to the home counties, London. So I got the job at Richmond Golf Club. Went there as deputy, and I was there 3 years. And the course manager, Lex Armitage, retired, and I got my first course manager's job at 28, and that's really where it began. And I remember having that moment when, first day at work, I'm course manager, I make the decisions, and all of a sudden I suddenly realised how much I really didn't know. Because as you work up, you look at your boss and go, hey, I wouldn't do it that way. I know there's a much easier way. But you never truly appreciate actually how much knowledge someone has until you actually, you stand in their shoes and you start work. I always remember going out, and it was the first week, and I was thinking, we need to fertilise. But what do I buy? Well, what nutrient analysis do I have? And this was even, I'd been to college, and I thought I was quite well educated, but I think it's not until you were in that position that you suddenly realise, actually, this is my responsibility. There was no safety net. The members came straight to me.
Easy to pick holes and things, isn't it?
Massively. And I think it's something also we now recognise is that actually being a manager is a completely different job than being a greenkeeper. The agronomy part is much smaller. I'm now responsible for people. How do I motivate them? How do I set the standards? How do I create an environment that people want to enjoy doing what they're doing? But I spent probably 10 years. I think it was like 14 years altogether at Richmond, and I'd done everything. I really had a passion for pushing the envelope. How can we do things different? We ended up putting a whole new irrigation system in. We'd done woodland management. We'd rebuilt greens, rebuilt tees, redone bunkers. We'd done civil engineering, redone the car park, and I had a taste for something more, and I found that I really wanted to stretch my skills. And I kind of spent quite a lot of time networking and meeting different people, and I got really friendly with Jimmy Kidd, opportunity to come up in Scotland, and that's how I went to G West. And to go to G West, I had to take a massive pay cut, but I see the opportunity of, I want the challenge, I want the opportunity, I want a bigger stage. And in 2008, February 2008, I went to Scotland to start on the G West project. Done nearly 8 years there, and after doing construction and grow in, and and having people like Bledge come and work for me, and
I thought he did the whole thing.
Felt like it.
Yeah. We need to have a discussion about another podcast quotes.
I might sound a bit. I might be completely off here. Jimmy Kidd, is he David McClay Kidd's father, who
Correct.
was the greenkeeper at Glen Eagles?
He was the estates manager at Glen Eagles, yes. And I think as you go through your career, you change of like, where do you aspire to be? Who do you need to speak to give you guidance and knowledge? And Jimmy was absolutely superb in that. And I thoroughly enjoyed my time at G West, and G West will always be my little baby. We created something amazing. It's probably the hardest mental golf course I've ever worked at and will ever work at. I mean, I would say it would break, and it has broken a lot of people just because of under certain circumstances. But I think we all learn a lot, and I feel extremely proud, of what Bledge has achieved. But we had Grant Frogley that's achieved so much. You've got Richard Jenkins that achieved a lot as well, and really good people.
Did I hear you had Michael Sawicki?
Michael Sawicki was Mikey Sawicki is the general manager.
Manager at Birkdale, yeah.
Birkdale, yes. He was my deputy at Richmond. And it's quite funny when you listen to podcasts like Joe Galati talks about your family tree, and it's like, I got all these different people. It's like, oh yeah, I work with them, or they work for me, and I think it's not, the success of all these individuals. It's not, I kind of nurtured what was already there. But as I've openly said before about Bledge will say that, I'm his mentor. I learn as much from Bledge as Bledge learns from me, and I think that's a true two-way street where you learn from each other. And I think I've been very fortunate to have great people work for me. My success has actually come from them as much as I generated it myself.
So what would a young James Bledge have been like? And could you tell the guys like Bledge, who's obviously gone on to do reasonably well, and Sawicki and some of the other guys you've worked with, could you tell back then when they were starting out, perhaps?
Can I answer this question?
No, you can't. Yes, you can see the potential. The hardest thing is that for them to fulfill their true potential, it's not that you have to be hard with them, but you do have to, like say, it's like your kids. If you overlove them, at times you're going to have to say to the kids no. And there's plenty of times with Mike that we had differences. Bledge, I had differences. Grant and Jenky. But the difference is that I'm trying to be honest and being true to you, and sometimes it's stuff that you're not going to want to hear. And that's what you have to do, which is, I think, is the important thing. But that builds great character. And, I guess my validation of my management techniques has been these guys have gone on to be extremely successful.
And for me, I needed that. I needed that honesty and kind of, I guess, like a hard line facts a lot of the time to get the most out of me. Otherwise, I probably would still have been coasting. And I think you shouldn't ever feel afraid of telling your staff or criticising them or praising them quite hardly at times, because it's for their own good, and I think some people maybe take it quite wrong and can't handle criticism, and I think it really has to happen for you to be able to progress yourself properly, and people should be able to jump on that a lot better.
No, I agree, and I think that's about how you build a successful career, because if people have come back to you and turn around and say, look, you could be better than that, look, if you're going to take offence to that, you're just not going to achieve anything. But if you see it as an opportunity, okay, I can see I can do better, I can learn better, that is the building blocks to then make you more successful.
Do you think you were a bit firmer perhaps on the ones that you thought did have more potential? Because if there's someone with the greatest respect, they might, you think this is their end game, you might give them a bit more leniency than someone who you think this guy could go on and be a world beater?
No. I think I was consistent with all my team. The difference is the guys that had the potential probably had more quantity of a hard time, because every time that they came back and saying, I've achieved this, right, okay, now I'm going to push you back out and now take you to the next level.
Yeah.
So I was trying to drive, I wasn't driving them, they drove themselves. I just fed their ambition, their interest, and it was, let's say, I think the proof in the pudding is that we've generated some really good modern day turf managers, which I think as a turf manager, that's your role. That's Bledge's role now, is to produce the next generation. Realistically, you're going to pull 10% of the potential. The 1% are going to be the shining stars. The other 90%, they're just passing through. And I don't mean that in a derogatory sense,
yeah.
but I try to make sure that within the teams that I have, the people that this is just a job, I want to make sure there's enrichment, they feel engaged and they're happy to work. But the people that want to generate a career, they're managed slightly differently, and part of that managed differently is, yes, they might feel I'm harder on them, but it's like I'm trying to drive you towards getting the best potential out of yourself. If you just want to coast, I'm never going to get you the best out of you. So the only way to not coast is to say, right, okay, how can I challenge you further?
Yeah. But do you think, looking back, that you can see yourself like going and being annoyed when you weren't? But now looking back, that's like the best thing that could have.
Yes, 100%. I think I quite often say to Lee now that I understand why the way he was back in the G West days, now that I am in that position, because when you've got the weight of the world on your shoulders and you needed to get results there, so you needed to push people and to get the most out of them, and you did possibly see a glimmer of hope in myself, and you pushed me out of my comfort zone. You made me come along and do talks in front of a lot of people at colleges when I've never really done. I mean, you started off my public speaking career, which I've done a lot of now, and that essentially is the main tool you need in your armoury as a turf manager. When you're managing staff, you need to be able to stand up. I mean, in July I'm going to be standing up in front of 50 people, and I need to go up there without any butterflies and smash it out, and stand up, be counted, have clear, concise communication. It's simple. I think I pride myself the most in communication because I find it the most important thing in my job. Whether that be to my staff, to my deputy first assistant, or to my secretary and Greens chairman, or to people listening to this podcast, or any other things we do. But Lee was always very good at that, and that's why we're such good friends, because I'm very grateful about the SHIT that Lee put me through a lot of the time. But it was always for the greater good, because he obviously seen something about a promise, really.
But I think that's the key thing is that I think as I get older, I realise you have to. If I had my time again, I would communicate to all of my team and turn around and saying, look, the criticism is professional, not personal. But when you're younger and you're a younger manager and you're learning how to be a better manager, quite often, I think managing a golf course is a very emotional place anyway, that, sometimes it's like you just need to get done. And particularly construction and growing, you're working towards weather and timelines. Sometimes you cut to the chase and you just say, get it done now, and some people will say, well, I'll take offence to that. You could have asked me nicely. It's just get it done, and that's the realities. But I think when I look at it, trying to be the best at what you're doing, I kind of look at, if you was an athlete, no one's going to pat you on the back for being 1 second slower. Your coach is going to turn around and say, you got to work harder. The coach does not sugarcoat it They just say, get it done or be second place. Do you want to be first place? Well, I'll drive you. And I think in some respects you've got to cut through the sugar coating and say, and Bledge and I have had some very, very clear conversations at G West about expectations and getting stuff done. And that's part of the not being sugar coated, but it's not personal, it's professional, because it's like, we need to get this done.
One of my funniest memories was when, and it's just come to me this second now you've said this, but when you and I sat up in the what we call that central area, we used to mix all the root zones and the sand.
Oh, central compound.
Yes, and we sat there. You're quite a large person, I would say, for anyone that's never met Lee before. You were what, 6 foot?
6'3".
6'3".
Goddess, I think.
We won't talk about stonage, but you're quite a substantial size of a man. We're in a 5 Series John Deere tractor, and you were sitting in the seat and I was in the buddy seats. There's not much room there, and we sat at that central compound for the best part of an hour. I would say, you probably don't remember this, but talking about my career and where I should be aiming to and things I should be achieving, and basically got like a dressing down for an hour in this confined space with zero ventilation, and actually smelt of your dog as well, because I used to work in that tractor with your dog for 12 hours a day. But yeah, but these things are life-changing moments, and they always stick in my head. And there's part of me, like, you rub off a lot of your stuff that you've taught me rubs off of me, and now my staff get treated the same sometimes because I see it as a winning formula in my opinion. Some of the stuff we've never agreed on, and I don't take that forward. But you're never going to pick everything from your bosses, never. But absolutely everything. But there's 60-70% of the stuff we've done, I carry on because it's worked great for me. And yeah, I think it's definitely your strong point, getting the most out of people and hard love.
I think also, which is quite important, is that it's not me that's taught you this, it's my predecessors that's taught me. It's that handing down of knowledge and experience. And I think what's relevant with this in the podcast is, if you're aspiring in whatever career that you're in, maybe some of the things that your manager or your boss has said to you that you've maybe thought, well, that wasn't fair, you maybe need to go back and reflect and sort of think, well, actually, are they telling me this to help me? There's a difference. And there's times when some of my bosses, I've kind of felt, oh, well, they were mean and I think this is unfair. But now I reflect back, it's like, they're the best people that I've ever had in my career, because at least they were trying to help me, even as much as that I thought I was right, I was wrong. And I think that's been quite important.
So after G West then?
Yeah, so after G West, I moved to the Royal Automobile Club in Epsom in Surrey, which was a phenomenal learning curve. Two things, well, a couple of things really, was one, I went from managing 18 holes to managing 36 holes, so a much bigger crew of people. The Royal Automobile Club, probably one of the biggest membership clubs in the world. 17,000 members, 2 clubhouses, one in the city, Pall Mall, phenomenal golf clubhouse, and their country club Epsom, which is where I was based. Big company. In the summer we'd have probably a head count of about 600 people. Taught me so much more about business, revenue, how much people spend, how much we spend, profit. Even though we were a non-profit organisation, it was run in a way that we reduced our costs and increased our profits, and all our profits were then reinvested back into projects. So that was a really good learning curve. Spent 4.5 years there, and I kind of got to the point in my career, it was like, you start reflecting, you think all the things that you've done and ticking the boxes, things that you liked. And I quite fancy doing construction again, but I'd always had this thing about, I love travel, I'll travel anywhere in the world. And I really wanted to sort of think, could I work abroad? and I always thought I need to give it a go, the acid test, whether I'd like it or not. So I had a phone call one day from Chris Haspel, and he phoned me up and he said, "Oh, do you know anyone that would consider doing a construction grow-in for a job in France? It's only an 18-month contract, but we're just looking for someone." And I said, "Right, that'll be me." So I said, "I'd be really interested." Went through the interview process, found out that it was Laborde in France, fantastic golf course, and this was going to be a Gil Hans construction grow-in. Got the job, went out there, best 18 months of my life, absolutely loved it. It was quite interesting, like I say, got the job, gave up a permanent secure job at RAC to go and do this, go and see where I'd like living in France. I think we were out there about 6 weeks, and then COVID hit.
Oh wow!
Yeah, that was like, oh. But you see, like, I think for me, for construction, it made no difference at all, because construction's so consuming. It consumes everything in your life. It's like a vacuum. It sucks everything up. That it didn't really make much difference to me. But done a construction grow-in of the new course. I think got in the World Top 100 as it opened. And loved it, and I had the contrast of managing the old course, which was Creeping Bent Greens. We had the new course, which was all on fescue, USGA greens, but living in France and the culture, absolutely loved it. One of the key aspects of the construction grow-in, and it's something that I've really learnt a lot more, is just that you really need to have the grow-in superintendent, course manager, really be part of the construction team. They really need to understand it's not just what the architect's trying to create, but it's also what the shapers are trying to create, and actually talking to them and saying, how does this golf hole, how does the golf course look and feel and play once we've got grass on it? And I think there's tons of golf courses that have lost its true architectural identity because the greenkeepers changed the mow lines, because, hey, I just cut the fairway straight because I can't be asked. I don't understand. I
want to get the greens cut in under 3 hours at a weekend, so I'm going to reduce the size of the greens.
Exactly, and I mean, we all know about green creep on the greens, how much they change from, if you've got USGA green and you've got a perimeter line and you know where the green shapes are meant to be. But it's from every component, the tees, the fairways, the approaches. And I think it's an important link to have an understanding of what is the architect trying to create. And that's not to say that the golf course stays fixed in stone, but it's like, how does the golf course evolve into the architect's view? The architect has a view of, well, when I build the golf course, this is kind of how it's going to look. But from the original drawings to the finished thing, that design evolves. And as if you built a Parkland golf course and you planted young whips, as the trees grow up, the characteristic of that golf course changes. So if you understand what the architect's trying to achieve, you're kind of all on the same hymn page of how to make sure that golf course evolves in the right theme. But if you have the golf course built, contractor builds it, and then they bring in a course manager, superintendent, that important part of the story, the history, is lost. Because the owner or the club or the committee will sort of think, well, you'll just get it. You won't just get it, and that's why it's important to be part of that journey. And I think that was very important part of being at Laborde, was spending time with the shaper, spend some time, via email with Gil, which hence spurned on, when I finished Laborde, a road trip in the US, because all the way through Laborde, the quotes of what we're trying to create were visions of all these other golf courses in the US. So when I finished my contract, I thought, well, hey, I've got an opportunity to go and travel. Hey, I love travelling. To actually go and see these golf courses and see for myself, was I get what they're trying to achieve. I understand now what they were trying to do. And sometimes, more often than not, it's not a carbon copy. Oh, go to Tobacco Road, take out the fifth green, and that's exactly. It's the image, the emotion, what you're trying to create. They're saying that's the effect we're trying to get to, but we don't want a carbon copy. We want something esque of that.
Or a strategy. There are shots that you hit into certain holes in certain ways you play them. Yeah. And I think that probably ties to 2 points. Firstly, what you were saying, everyone wraps up and then hands over to someone else, and then often, certainly on the best golf courses, there are little nuances and details and things that if you just go there, play it once, you probably won't even notice them. 99% of golfers won't even notice them. But sometimes they're the things that make really good golf courses really good golf courses. The fact that there is a little kicker over the left there that you can run the shot in if you play it that way, or if the pin's in a certain position, there's a slope that allows you to access it that most people would never even notice. And if you don't know it's there and it's a different course manager who comes in, maybe the short grass there gets swapped out for a bit of slightly longer collar and you can't access that shot anymore because it wasn't deemed important because they didn't get the full picture. And to the point of recreating shots and not copying holes, but drawing inspiration from holes, how often do you see a hole and it's not a version of it, but you can say, oh, this reminds me of the whatever hole, insert name here. Like, oh, this hole is a bit, the 8th hole at Blackwell, that's a bit like the 13th hole at Augusta, isn't it? And obviously it's not at all, but it kind of plays the same way, and you can kind of see it. So there's so many examples out there.
I mean, you've only got to look at, like, you know, what Ryan knows that Addington's doing. He's stripping back, you know, trees, long grass to short grass, and then they're going like, oh my God, we've got this amazing golf course that was here all the time, but over time that's been lost. I mean, obviously that's over a very long period of time, but the scenario is still the same, is that if you're not carrying on what that architect's trying to do and educate yourself, then, you know, it's like cooking a meal and not putting the seasoning in. You know, it's like, well, it's nice, but I know it could be better, but I don't know why. Well, you didn't put the seasoning in. That was in the original recipe. You decided not to carry that forward.
If you have a Tom Simpson course or a Harry Colt course or something, then you can bet your bottom dollar there will be places where they wanted you to play to that you can't play to anymore on so many courses because, you know, the fairways aren't 60 yards wide anymore. And
such a huge part now in architecture's work makeup, isn't it? Is restorations and looking back. I mean, the amount of work you do yourself with CDP, looking back into the archives and seeing where green shapes were and pushing things back out to where they're supposed to be. I mean, that must take up quite a considerable percentage of the work that you guys do.
Certainly in Britain and continental Europe. Globally, it's probably a mix between building new stuff. But, you know, the new stuff is inspired by a lot of the old stuff. You know, that's what we like, particularly as a firm. That's our shared interest. But yeah, it's finding the one shot on a hole that you couldn't play in a few years ago because the green had become a version of a circle and the fairway had become a bit narrow, and there was some rhododendrons planted on the side of the hole where the extremity of the fairway used to go to. It's not to say that, you know, we've got to make every fairway 100 yards wide and got to make every green 1,200 square meters. You know, it's not the point. It's just doing that in places and trying to find those more interesting shots, because that's what separates for me a fine course from a great course, is when you can be a bit creative and have a bit of fun out there, and it's easily done.
Well, it's easily done and easily lost.
Exactly.
I mean, it was quite. I mean, let's say Gil would reference Simpson a lot with the board, what he's trying to create. But I think, let's say, if you if you don't understand the story, you don't know about the story, you can easily see how phenomenal golf courses just turn bland, because you can make short grass into long grass very quickly for whatever reason. And I think that was a really good learning curve. So if I was ever going to do another construction, I really want, part of it is spending time with the architects, spending time with shapers, because it's, what story do you need me to tell? And actually, I'm going to write a part of that story, but I want to make sure that what my words are and my chapters follow on from what you do. There can't be a chapter where it's a blank, it's a complete disjoint. And I think when you look at some of the recent constructions in the last 5-10 years, the ones that work really well is where you have this consistent connection. You've got to understand, everyone's got to understand that story.
Yeah.
So, moving on from that now, let's discuss your current venture.
Nova Scotia.
Yes.
Cabot Cape Breton. So, opportunity come up to go out there, and a new challenge. Phenomenal part of the world, coastline, just, it's like being in Scotland. You know, I mean, Nova Scotia's roughly half the size of the UK. Population wise, we're about 900,000. The UK, half of the UK, you're still looking at 34 million. So you don't have the density, you know. So some of the facilities are not there, but then the population's not there. But I'm there to manage, or have a team manage 3 beautiful golf courses. We got the Links and the Cliff, both in the world top 100. The Cliffs is number 1 in Canada. The Links is like number 3. And we've got a 10-hole par 3 course, and we have like not golf, but the par 3 course is all creep and bent, but the other 2 courses are pure fescue. So you've got a real contrast there. But it's a resort course. So we open mid-May, we shut down mid-October, and every day we have to deliver. And it's a very different way of working, because we're not on the route to anywhere. People have set out to come to us, and they want to be wowed, and we want to give them guest experience. And I have to say, the whole team delivers completely. The guests turn up, they feel welcomed, they are looked after. Everything they want, they do to a T, and it's like really impressive to see it and to hear it. But it's a different challenge. We have, because wintertime we shut down, we don't have golf. We have a lot of snow during the from January to April. So in the winter we have a team of 10, 11 people. In summertime we'll have a team of up to 50 people. So we have to bring people backwards and forwards. Different dynamic. I've got 2 maintenance facilities, 2 superintendents. I've had 2 superintendents before, but under 1 maintenance facility. But I'm running 2 different sites. So as I've gone through my career, it's something different. It's a different dynamic. I'm learning to adopt a different skill set to, how do I manage 2 different teams? How do I pull them together? How do we run to create one standard? How can we grow our standards, our efficiencies, dynamics? How do I bring something new to the table?
So 7 days a week, pay-as-you-play golf.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
How does maintenance work for, if you need to do, well, I guess in Festy you don't have to do massive maintenance. You might have to do overseeding and some top dressing, aeration, but how do you fit that in amongst people who are paying a lot of money?
Stealth. We do some aeration work. We have to be very careful. We're mindful of when we do dressings. Our dressings are more dustings. Our aeration is more venting. We can't disturb the surface too much because, like I say, it's whether it's a Monday or a Thursday or a Sunday, someone's turned up and paid, a sizable amount of money to be entertained.
whether it's sunny, raining, whatever else. So we have to be very creative in how do we get the agronomics to work, and the team do a fantastic job at doing that. My role is actually how can we actually take that to the next level? How can we be more efficient? How can we get more things done? How can we do things that we're currently not doing at the moment?
And how have you found the recruiting so far? Frustrating having to rebuild a team every year, or?
It's not frustrating because I'm very aware that the world has changed, where it's a employee's paradise. They can work wherever they want. I think a lot of the countries are waking up to the idea of, hey, we need to dumb down our visa application process so people can move overseas a lot better. But I think it's about trying to create a good team, a good solid core, and we do have good solid people. I want to make sure that we can develop them necessarily more than we currently do. You know, how can we take a grade C employee and make them a grade B? How can we make the grade B into a grade A? Comes back to G West. How can I grow the team? You know, we recognise that a lot of our team members are passing through. How can they come in through the door and leave us being better people? How can they be the one to recommend, hey, go and work for this guy, go and work for this company, because they'll help grow you? And that's the strategy I'm working at the moment, is come and work for me, how can I grow you?
Do you think there's an opportunity with the Cabot portfolio? Because for those that don't know, Cabot, you've got obviously in Nova Scotia, that was the first Cabot property,
the original one, yes.
And then now, I mean, God, it's growing like anything. You've acquired Castle Stuart in the Highlands and adding another course there. St Lucia, which just looks like the most ridiculous site for the Core Crenshaw course that they're building over there, and probably maybe Highlands was more recent than Tree Farms.
So we got Citrus Farms. So I think anyone within turf, I think it's a fantastic opportunity. You can come and work on pure fescue on Nova Scotia or in Scotland. You can do bent grass, as they call it, creeping bent in west side of Canada. You could manage Bermuda down at Citrus Farms. You can manage Paspalum in St Lucia. Hey, what other grass do you want to manage? You know, and a great opportunity. And they're a great company, aspiring people to work with. And that's predominantly one of the reasons why I'm out there, is as much what they can feed me, I'm trying to feed back. I'm, like I say, this whole thing like G West, you're trying to build a good team of people looking at strategies, learning ideas and evolving. But recruitment is brutally painful, but I don't think it's impossible.
And what are these guys doing for the 4 months that they're off? What do they tend to do?
Nova Scotia's got a system where they can go unemployment benefit, predominantly because half the country shuts down because obviously the winter and the snow, so they have that system. So there's a proportion of our team that return to us every year. So once they finish with us, they go on unemployment benefit. Come springtime, they come back to us.
In a hell of a state after drinking and eating Cheetos for 4 months and playing Xbox.
It's quite interesting. I mean, I chat to them and say, like, well, what do you do? It's like there's not many opportunities to actually take time away, spend time with the family and the kids and chill out. You know, they'll give everything that they need to do during the growing season, but the winter time, they can be themselves. But that is just the Nova Scotia system of how the economy works, because of really it's the winter that drives it.
Whereas in Scandinavia, same kind of thing. You would be exactly that, January until April, and they'd be working ski resorts or logging or snow ploughing, all that kind of stuff.
I mean, let's say for us, because we're relatively flat, there is a ski slope, but there's no there's no real winter work, but it's a historical thing within Nova Scotia. That's the tendency of what they do.
Mm-hmm. Hopefully, can't wait to come out one day. It is on the agenda. Once we get this hard year past with, it's on the agenda.
I've got a couple of questions sent in from some of our Badger fans out there in the world.
This is a first.
This is a first, isn't it? We should do this more often. But chatting with a very good friend of mine, former guest on the pod, Ryan Nodes, who has recently returned from a trip to Chicago. And he was remarking on the quality and the firmness of their putting surfaces over there, especially at Old Elm in Chicago and a few of the other great courses. And he was saying that because of the snow and the fact that they sort of are not played on and frozen almost solid for a period, it stops a lot of the winter diseases and things coming through, and they're at sort of like less than 1% organic and incredibly firm and some of the best surfaces. So what's it like managing a golf course when you come back from it being shut down under an enormous pile of snow for 5 months?
I think pros and cons. We have to deal with the winter snow cover. Snow cover's not an issue. Ice cover's more of a...
Yeah, he said ice is the thing that can completely...
Ice is the killer. We're quite fortunate with pure fescue greens. They can sit 90 days under ice and they'll come out okay. Whereas Chicago, they're probably on bent grass. They're having a harder time. I would say probably in some respects we'll even go into winter and the greens are firm, because we don't have, from the point of our season opening, our season open mid-May, we might have snow cover right up until first week of May. So we don't actually have a lot of time. So there's a lot of firmness that's actually kept in those surfaces. The other thing that's beneficial in North America, they still have a lot of chemicals that they can use, which we don't have in Europe. And I think two things that makes turf management incredibly difficult in the UK. One, the climate, because of winter wear. Some of it is damaged through the golfers. Some of it is damaged by the greenkeepers trying to prepare a surface for winter play. And the second part is you don't have the chemicals to give you disease control levels that they have in North America.
Now you've brought me perfectly to the second question, which was asked by a good friend of mine who's an excellent lag putter over in Ireland, and he's worrying a little bit because it looks like they're going to outlaw pretty much every chemical, not just herbicides and pesticides, but wetting agents and everything. And is that the case in France? Did they do something similar? Because I think it was borrowed. The legislation was borrowed from there.
When I was there in France, believe it or not, in France I had more chemicals than I had in the UK to use. But one of the issues you had to follow what they call re-entry times. So if I sprayed a fungicide, you couldn't play on that surface for 24 hours. Okay. If I applied a wetting agent, they class it as a chemical, you couldn't play on that surface for like 48 hours. So It wasn't the chemicals themselves, it was the point that
the restrictions that came with them.
That came with it, that made it very hard. I mean, I think there's no doubt. I think it's not just chemicals that's been withdrawn. I think realistically the strength of chemicals now that we have today are nowhere near as strong as we had in 20 years. And my concern is, I think that within turf, we are excellent ambassadors for use of chemicals. We have to be certificated. Our equipment is super modern, super high tech, GPS, calibrations. And if you think, on
disposal, high-end disposal.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, like, you look at most golf courses, anything between 100 and 150 acres, right? We're going to spray 2 acres. So, like, less than 2%. But we're now spraying more because the product's weaker, and I'm not sure that strategy is right. But if we're going to go down the road of no chemicals, at least it makes it a level playing field. The hardest thing it's going to say to the guest, the player, the people that want to play golf is, you're going to have to expect a lesser product.
Is that where you think it will end up? It won't be different ways of achieving the same product. Ultimately, the product across the UK over the coming years and other parts of where these chemicals are just not going to be applicable, is going to detrimentally affect the quality of the product that you and Bledge and all of you guys out listening to this ultimately put out there, and it's something that consumers are going to have to come to terms with almost.
I think definitely yes, but I think it will be rebadged differently. So what I'm saying is, we could change our management regimes so that we get next to no disease. But what it's going to mean is, like, instead of your winter green height of being 5 mil, your winter height might be 10 mil. So winter time, yes, your greens are nice and clean, they look lovely, but they're only going to putt 5 foot. If you want those summer conditions in the winter time, you're not going to be able to do those without some sort of chemical control. And I know there's lots of people saying, cultural practices and everything else. Having disease within that ecosystem of a living plant is a part of that whole process. What you're trying to do is control the pathogens, the pathogen numbers, so that you don't really get disease. So you want to have less stress on the plant. But less stress on the plant means it's not going to play as well as you currently expect to have this time of year.
In golf, it's a completely different game.
Yes, and that's where the expectation is going to come from. Is it's like, I can't give you what you have today. In the future, that's going to look different.
Which is 100 times worse on Parkland golf courses, when we've got trees and poor drainage. I mean, out here we've got a tiny bit of fusarium kicking about just now, even after putting down a fungicide literally 2 weeks before the snow came. The snow lifts and there's little bits of fusarium, and it's like, how can that happen? I know that in the past the daconils etc. would have stopped that in its tracks, but modern fungicides, they obviously don't cut it. And you can go down a rabbit hole with this, and you could say, like, well, the farmers are spraying hundreds of thousands of hectares with the same active ingredients, stronger, and we can't spray 1 hectare.
Is this, do you think, going to, if you play it out logically, is it going to cause even more of a gap between the guys who have slightly, they're always going to have more organic, the parkland courses who have the trees and all of the issues and the drainage problems that come with it, and then aren't going to be able to have more fescue, lower organic in, that's going to perhaps naturally limit some of the diseases.
Worms, biggest problem just now at this time of year on the wet clay courses. I mean, you could go a golf course 5 miles from here, for example, inland. In fact, you could probably go the other side of Hoylake Muni just now and have these problems a mile away. And yeah, the gulf will become huge. I mean, I feel so sorry for a lot of these Parkland guys just now that are battling. I mean, every single day I get up and look in the rain gauge, there's 20 mil in there, and we're on sand, and it's quite wet just now. But imagine that being on a Parkland course with worm cast trees.
Well, this is it. I mean, I think the golf businesses are going to suffer is, were they built on effectively cheap land? Was it on clay? How well was it built? Are they still... Does the golf course need to have 500 rounds a week for them to survive? There's lots of variables in it, but I think it's going to look very different. The only thing that I think that there's some opportunity that we could stave off a complete chemical ban is using technology. If we were able to say to the government bodies, hey, if we can use GPS drones that can only target stress areas on the greens, we could reduce our chemical usage significantly. The next problem is people like Syngenta and BASF, are they going to be able to sell enough product to make it worthwhile? Because we're now going to be buying even less chemicals.
Yeah. So the unit cost goes up, and again, it opens that divide between the courses
Who
that
can
have
afford,
the
who
capital
can't.
and who can't.
So I think going forward, it's going to be challenging, very, very challenging. Because, like I say, it's how do we maintain that player experience?
I'm trying to think where it is, but is it somewhere like Finland where they're limited the amount of water even that you can put on in the summer?
I don't know. I know that I was listening to a podcast the other day. Florida was restricting the use of fertilizer. And I think all of these things are coming. And I think, to be fair, actually greenkeepers are actually pretty good at being ahead of the game by documenting what they're using. They're trying to be more sustainable. They're trying to give a purpose and a reason for the products they're using to produce the product. And effectively, we're growing a crop, no different than a farmer. But, like I say, golf has a hard time as trying to be the good guys.
It's funny. One of the things that I'm working on with CDP projects at the moment is actually trying to flip all of these, well, I don't know whether they're misconceptions, but certainly the conception that golf is unsustainable, bad for the environment, bad for ecology, or, uses masses of water, and actually flip that round entirely and try and say, well, hang on, there's technologies now, this exists, these are out there, that means that we can generate energy from golf courses quite easily. There's a lot of ground out there to be used. We can sink carbon, especially with heathland regeneration. Far better to store carbon in heathland environments than it is even in woodland environments. We can create sort of aquifers and get slow absorption of water through a golf course where when urban areas are being developed and tarmacked over and have flash flooding everywhere, well, you need areas of open ground, especially when they're close to urban areas, that can take that water, filter it, get it back into the water system and get it back into the groundwater slowly, rather than just trying to get it so quickly through a drain or something. So golf has so many things that could be positive, but we're still somehow seen as a negative for the environment. And do you think that goes to your point? We can actually, if we think about it, we can actually try and get ahead of these things and offset some of the restrictions that might come in. And we've just got to be a bit more creative and be aware that they're coming and think how we can deal with them before they do.
We just need to create another bad guy, because at the moment golf is the bad guy.
Yeah.
And actually we're not. We actually do a lot of all of the things that you've just listed, but we're going to continue to be the bad person until we can shift someone else to be the bad person. Like, say, for example, we'll just say it has to be the farmers. We're not going to lose that position, because if the public are keen to turn around and say all of the bad things that we're doing, and we're doing all the good things, they're going to say, well, who's the bad guy then?
We need some image rehabilitation.
Yes.
We're trying, though. We do try, we do a fantastic job with our environment awards, and we promote ecology more than ever just now. You look at the amount of work that we all do with Natural England and all the wildlife trusts. This week I spent a lot of time with Bob Taylor and Cheshire Wildlife, Natural England. I'm actually going on a toad handling course in April.
Oh, wow.
Just news for the podcast.
Do you often handle toads?
It's going to be the first time I've got, and luckily it's near my hometown, in a place called Calaverick. I'm going toad handling because that's how much we take things serious. If they are natterjack toads, which are very they're endangered, and they come on the course, I'm going to be the only person that's going to be allowed to touch them. You know, if we were the bad guys. I know your faces look all screwed up just now.
I know, it's like, where are we going with this conversation?
I'll tell you where we're going with it. Merch. Toad handling merch.
Okay, we'll add it to the non-existent line of other badger merch.
But it's true, because that's to the nth degree. This is how serious we take things.
Yeah, well, we take.
It's interesting because I think someone, I can't remember on what podcast someone was talking about. Part of Golf's saviour is actually for them to be part of the community, and I know GCSAA, the American Greenkeeper Association, are doing the first green thing where they're actually reaching out into schools to say use the golf course as the classroom where they learn. And it's like, you know, for you, Bledge, if you're doing all of this and the site here is really good for the toads, and you can start showing our community actually this site not just does golf, this site is also the habitat that supports all these endangered species, and without this the habitat's even smaller. But the club are investing in making sure the community still has, you know, all these species that make this area so special.
Yeah, and this is the great argument with, if the golf wasn't here, what would happen to these dunes? Well, the dunes of Hoylake undoubtedly would have been houses, and the toads wouldn't have had anywhere to live. And if the golf course doesn't make money, then it can't invest in those things that you're talking about, Lee, which I guess is kind of the argument that they're talking about up at Cool Links, and Chris Haspel, who you mentioned before, is trying to make that argument that the declining, I don't know whether Cool Links is, it must be Triple SI.
Yes, big time, yeah.
So it's, the arguments they're trying to make is, well, if there's a revenue stream coming in, that means that they can be invested in, and all of these, all of the ecological merit that the land perhaps once had and now will be less prevalent because it's been mismanaged or not managed for a long, long time. Golf can allow revenue to be reinvested that does improve the ecology, and everything can work together if that's what we set out to do. And perhaps in years gone by, that wasn't really on the agenda like it is nowadays.
I mean, I think it's true to say, you know, a lot of these national bodies don't have the resources to dedicate these areas. So if you turn around and say, hey, some of the land's taken up by turf, hey, what's so wrong with turf? It's not concrete, it's not a house, it's not a factory. You know, you got turf. But part of that business to sustain that view of vegetation and all the heather and the broom and the coastal support from erosion, if a private enterprise is doing that, then surely all of that is being preserved and being enhanced, as opposed to effectively slowly eroded. And realistically, you know, a lot of these government agencies do not have the money or the resources to put into doing it. So, you know,
if you're talking, say, with all your cut surfaces, 15 odd hectares, and a total of 100 hectares, for example, of all your land, exactly like you say, that's going to be managed turf, but because of that, they're going to have income and money that they can manage the rest of that 100 hectares. Yeah. Whereas, like, Cool Links was a perfect example. I walked it with Chris, and it was just completely neglected in a lot of places that they were going to.
Can you imagine if you could say, if you just took that argument and you said, right, for every 100 hectares of land that we can improve, if we just take out 10% of it, that 10% can fund the ecology of the entire site.
It would be
everyone would be like, wow,
ecology,
you know, what a solution this is. Well, that's kind of what we're talking about.
They gave them that solution, you know. I mean, we saw at Royal Cinqueports, and you saw it with your own eyes, Lee, as well, with sorting out the rough down there. I mean, the bird life just went nuts, absolutely nuts. You could see the difference, and all the bird watchers completely agreed, and I mean, you can see it with your own eyes, and it's what we hope to do here in the future as well. You know, I mean, golf courses are great for the environment.
But you are investing in the future of diversity, which is not only benefits the golf course as an environment, but you are benefiting the community that surrounds that golf course.
Absolutely.
You know, and I think that's quite often the bit that's get missed. But it's like, how do we change the language from what people seem to think it's chemical? And maybe the solution is where you have a chemical ban, because we can say, well, we're still maintaining golf courses, but you can't keep turning around and saying to us that we're just throwing chemicals around, because we can't, because there are no chemicals. You know, and there's always going to be naysayers. But I think ultimately for the business, it's like, are we doing the right thing? I mean, let's say for us, we're just about to do some work this spring by putting up bat boxes. Bats are massively in decline in Nova Scotia, but it doesn't cost us very much and much resources to actually do our bit, and we're on 500 acres of ground. We can actually be doing our bit to society, and I think as being a part of the community, that's our responsibility. What are we contributing to the solutions, you know, to solve these problems?
What wildlife do you see in the course that you've never seen before that's kind of taking you aback? You don't have moose there, do you?
We do. We have moose on Nova Scotia, but I haven't seen them, but they are huge. We do have bear, but I have yet to see him. But we have,
apart from you.
Yeah, apart from me. No, I would say, because let's say Nova Scotia is very, very similar to Scotland. So
eagles, or
yeah, we see some. We've got some eagles right on the coastline. I believe it's some osprey that that go hunting right on the. Well, they might be sea eagles, maybe because they're right on the coastline. But all the normal, you know, wildlife. But again, like say, you know, greenkeepers, like farmers, we are custodians of the land, and it's not just the green that we're trying to manage. We're trying to manage everything. So when the guest, the player turns up, it's like, this feels so natural. This feels lovely.
I always found greenkeepers to be very proud of their ecology and wildlife, and I think it can be really uplifting when I mean, we had all our kestrels give birth. Well, there was six kestrels we brought up in the box out there. I mean, you watch them take flight for the first time. It's pretty amazing, you know. And we've got the camera in the box and we can see them all. It's great, and you get a huge buzz about the club when stuff like that happens.
Brilliant.
But that's the evidence to show people that, you know, we're not the bad people. We are the good people. Hey, someone's always going to turn and say golf is bad, and whatever we say, whatever we do is not going to change their mind. But we're just doing what we feel is right and our duty to be good custodians.
Yeah. Well, shall we end it by asking about your trip that you're on this week? Because you're bringing these guys out. Is your super and your...
So I've got my Jason Zybel, who's my superintendent on the Cliffs, and Rob Monroe, who's his first assistant on the Cliffs course. So I'm a huge believer in study tours, that you learn so much, not just walking a course, but you're talking about the agronomy, you're managing your team, what equipment, your setups, how we can compare our maintenance, what we do in Nova Scotia, to here. So I've brought them on the tour, so they came here today. Tomorrow we're going to drive up to Castle Stewart, which is part of the Cabot group now, Cabot Highlands. So we're there tomorrow. Sunday we're going to go Skibo Castle, one of my best places of all time. I love that place.
Me too.
And then Monday we'll be at Royal Dornoch in the morning, Braw in the afternoon.
Oh God, I'm so envious. That's my favourite part of the country.
There's a seat in the car, Sam.
Yeah, well, don't
I could
tempt
tell
me.
Harriet that you've been abducted.
And then we're going to come down, pop into Trump Aberdeen. Never been there, but it relates to, you know, links management, resort type golf, and then drop down to
Be interested to hear what you think of that place.
Yes, yeah, it's going to, like I say, it was built when I was here, but never went up there. And then old course at St Andrews, drop into Kingsbarns, Dunbarney, which I've never been to. Take the guys to enjoy Edinburgh in the evening on Friday night, and then Saturday drop back into Harrogate and to enjoy what I think is one of the best conferences in the world is BTME. And the guys get to experience networking and talking and meeting superintendents on this trip and going home with a bucket full of ideas.
One of the highlights of my year as well.
My
BTME
first time this year, can't wait.
BTME Virgin.
Absolutely.
Doing a talk as well, me and the Badger.
Yep.
And
a ruck of podcasts as well, aren't we?
Yeah, we're podcasting from the van in the Majestic car park.
Yeah.
So on your line of questions, I've hit up the group and we've got a quick couple of questions for you. We've got a serious one and one not so serious. First question: what is your favourite golf course in the world? This is from Matt Plested from Stoneham. Lovely Matt. Lovely Matt.
Well, I've worked on or I've visited.
Probably played, I would think he would say. Skibo, maybe you've kind of hinted
but I would say Skibo's all about the emotion, how you feel. The one that I just absolutely loved walking around and seeing, and it Tobacco Road,
okay,
North Carolina, just phenomenal. You either like it or you hate it, but just off the charts.
Yeah. Shout out to Rob Lee, the Ginger Prince down at St George's. That's his favourite, isn't it?
Yeah.
So the three questions. Just one just come in from Scott Aitchison from Royal Dornoch, who's in Dublin this weekend.
Not applicable.
So his question is: Scott Aitchison is still drinking heavily. Any tips on how to stop him?
Tell him it's his round.
Yes. And Paul Armour, swish or switch?
Swish, and you know it's swish.
On that moment, this podcast is ending. It's switch.
Lee, where can people find you on social media or?
Twitter, I'm just Lee Strutt MG.
Can we stop there? Can we just for the listeners? Can we tell them your full title? Because you used to always make me put this on our talks, and it used to make me laugh. And for this, Sam. It's gonna blow your mind. Right.
So my full title is Lee Strutt, PG Dip, MG, CGS, CGCS, MS, and then I've got the Australian designation, which is certified turf manager. Something else.
It's a lot of letters.
Does that mean he knows what he's doing?
Mine's is just James Bledge.
Well, Lee, we're incredibly grateful that you flew all of this way, thousands of miles, to record our podcast. So thank you very much.
No, it's
and have fun in the Scottish Highlands.
Oh, I think that's not going to be difficult. But like I say, it's a phenomenal opportunity, and thank you for being part of this. I think podcast culture, I think, is so important. So many guys sat on a machine, driving somewhere where they can learn something, hear something, and I think it's a great service that you give to our industry. Yeah. So thank you.
It's great fun. We're loving having you on. We wanted to have you on from the start, so we're chuffed to bits. And even better in the flesh, I think.
Yes.
As opposed to on a computer screen, which wouldn't have been as good.
No.
Yeah.
And now we can continue back in the house.
Foster's all round.
Some more Madry. But thanks very much, Lee. You've been fantastic.
No worries. Cheers.
Okay.